your inspiring words. I would now like to welcome Secretary General Guillaume Julian to make his opening remarks. Mr. Secretary General, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Honorable delegates, fellow student officers, and distinguished guests. 50 years ago, in the midst of the Cold War where the threat of nuclear annihilation was omnipresent, then Senator John F. Kennedy created and enshrined the ideal of a new frontier. Speaking of this ideal at the 1960 Democratic National Convention, Kennedy proclaimed, "The new frontier of which I speak is not a set of promises, it is a set of challenges." 50 years later, we stand on the edge of our own new frontier. Our frontier, rather than being characterized by space and nuclear development, is one of technological progress and advancement. For indeed today, the endless and ever-growing drive of technological innovation is creating a whole host of new issues that we must confront and resolve in order to assure the continuity of our society. The notions of freedom of speech and assembly, the inalienable rights of personal liberty and prosperity were all created in a day and age when the extent of one man's freedom was limited. In those times, messages were spread to a handful of listeners in an assembly hall. Today, with the click of a button, our views and beliefs can be made available to millions of people. This is a daunting prospect, yet it is our reality. Today, our words and actions, no matter how small, no matter how seemingly insignificant, can have a profound and lasting effect. This revolutionary tool that is technology can also very easily be used against us. Issues such as cyber terrorism are of great concern to us all, not only because of the threat they pose to our global security, but because it has not been properly addressed or solved at an international level. In this day and age, we are all dependent upon one another. The global financial crisis has proven to be an evident testament to this reality. As an international body, we must understand that the repercussions of our actions of the country will be felt by all nations. In light of this, one of the main challenges of our new frontier is to adapt our policies to an international stage. As an international community, how can we accept that 1.4 billion people live in abject poverty? As an international community, how can we accept that 33.3 million people live with AIDS, and a majority of which don't have access to treatment? As an international community, how can we accept that in the poorest 60% of nations, 1 in 3 girls do not go to school? All of these challenges pose a major threat to our societies, and unless properly dealt with, will act as a barrier to any progress we wish to accomplish. If we do not act to correct these problems, we are forcing many young people, out of anger and despair, into the cold grips of radicalization, which again threatens our country and every one of our lives. Although terrorism has hidden in between the lines of history books for thousands of years, we are currently faced with a radical new wave of terrorists, characterized by faceless men who hide behind the banner of a religion to carry out their hateful and divisive crimes. In an attempt to polarize our world, this unnamed enemy carries out its acts of terror in new and more sophisticated ways. Their ultimate goal is to create panic and to deter us from making the changes in our world that will eradicate their regressive and oppressive ideology. We must stand strong in face of these terrorists. We must show them that our resolve is undeterred, that our willingness to assure basic human rights for all is not negotiable, and that our dream for a peaceful and tolerant world is profound. Through their hateful words and actions, these terrorists tear at the very essence of our societies. Their crazed ideologies must be met with a unified movement for peace and tolerance. However, to obtain this peace, we must take decisive actions, not just as individual nations, but as a unified entity. If we fail to do so, we are not only compromising our own security, we are also sacrificing our most basic beliefs. Every time an unjustified and unprovoked act of violence is carried out, with the intention of spreading fear and hatred, the international community must view this as an attack against the ideals that our nation and this body was built upon. There is no question as to whether these ruthless acts of violence must be addressed. But let us not be blinded by our passion, and in an effort to create peace, unintentionally spread the messages of fear that these terrorists support. If we compromise our values and ethics in the face of duress, they will have won. We must, especially in these turbulent times, remain united and strong. To curb these threats, we need a new approach, an approach worthy of these new and revolutionary times. We must focus our energy on ensuring that education is readily available, on promoting economic growth by employing new and innovative measures and policies, so that young men and women will be drawn away from the prospects of radicalization. By focusing on the needs of women, as well as overall social development, we'll be able to create societies that are more educated and ultimately more open to peace. We have a moral obligation to advance the cause of human rights all over the world, and we must do so by focusing on economic and social development and ensuring prosperity for all citizens. By quenching the thirst for freedom of the oppressed, we are taking the right steps in creating a more tolerant and open society. Freedom, be it personal or institutional, is the one beacon of light that has consistently driven and motivated this organization. As the future leaders of this world, we must reaffirm the unwavering and continuous commitment to freedom that our fathers and grandfathers have fought to protect. At this crucial junction in human history, we can elect to promote freedom as an international right, and so doing, promote the ideals of a free society in all corners of the world. Today, we must proclaim our commitment to freedom. Today, we must shine our beacon in all areas where darkness and desolation still imprisons our fellow human beings. Today, we must choose to take the final steps to make all of mankind free. Even if it is a long and arduous path, today we can choose to make a difference. Although the times have changed, although the issues that plague us are as different as they are vast, although our world is nothing like it was 50 years ago, we are still inspired and driven by the frontier of which John Kennedy spoke. As a generation, this challenge, and more importantly, how we choose to undertake it, will define our legacy when the responsibility of governing will be passed on to us. Although there are many courses of actions that lay ahead, each of which will have its own outcome and ramifications, two stand out as the most obvious choices. The first is that we can keep our policies, each nation with its own interests and personal desires, leading to division and a polarized world. Or we can choose to make a concerted effort, not as members of a given nation, but as members of a global community, to make decisions through a multilateral collaboration. If we elect the latter, I am confident that we will be able to create a more tolerant and just society in which all men share the ideals of freedom and prosperity. Over the course of the next couple days, as you debate the issues which create and define our new frontier, keep in mind the importance of the task that you are undertaking. What we do here today will be a direct reflection of what we can do in the years and decades ahead. Diplomacy will play an even greater role in the future if we choose to work together as nations. Let us, here and today, be a reflection of the kind of diplomacy that we would like to advance in the years to come. As we stand at the edge of our own new frontier, in the midst of a paradigm shift, we also stand at pivotal crossroads in human history. We have choices to make, and those choices will ultimately determine how our generation will be viewed by history. Although the right decisions may not always be the easiest or most politically convenient, we must choose them nonetheless. Our new frontier must not simply challenge us to undertake these issues, it must inspire us to solve them. Our new frontier must motivate us to adapt our policies to help all nations in the achievement of its goals. Our new frontier must, in short, be the catalyst for the change that we are all obliged to bring about. In light of this, let us adhere to what President Kennedy said half a century ago. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and success of liberty. Thank you very much.